Bizarre Reality Media. The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Orin.
What is up, Bizarre Society? Welcome to the expanse of deep conversational exploration into the fringes of social norms. I'm the one they call Shane, aka the original Shane Squatch, and today for you guys, I'm joined once again by storyteller extraordinaire Nomar Slevik as he unravels bizarre tales that blur the lines between folklore and reality. From a few mysterious turn-of-the-century cases in Maine to a few more modern cryptid sightings, this episode challenges what we know and invites you to explore the unknown. Unlock the secrets behind the stories that refuse to stay dead, because these tales aren't just stories. They might just be a glimpse into a reality we're only beginning to understand. But before we get into this fascinating episode, just one piece of news and updates. The next live episode of Bizarre Inquiries will be happening on Monday, July 6th at about 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If anybody wants to pop in and check that out, and if anybody has any questions, clips, or articles that they might want to submit for that, make sure you guys get it to us before then. But if not, of course, we'll pass it along to the next episode. And I just want to give a big shout out to listener Kelly over there, who keeps submitting these listener clips. We definitely appreciate it. And hopefully with giving him a bit of a shout out on this show too, hopefully, more of you guys will be inspired to send in some more clips and articles for us to be able to check out, because we, again, definitely appreciate it. And if anybody is interested in being a guest on the show, sharing your bizarre experiences or encounters, or contacting me for any other reason whatsoever, you guys can get a hold of me through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys could always get a hold of me through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the two that I'm the most active on. And you guys could also call or text the Bizarre Reality Media hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551. And you guys can call or text that 24/7. And for all professional inquiries, you guys can email me at bizarrerealitymedia@outlook.com. And if you guys happen to miss any of that, it is all available down in the show description and off of the link tree. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome back to the show, the enchanting storyteller himself. Please welcome back Nomar Slevik. How's it going today, man?
Shane, what is up, my friend? Look at that hat you got on. That hat is sweet, dude.
Good old Michigan dog, man. This has been my absolute new favorite hat. After I figured out about that minor league baseball team, man, it's like the only hat I've been wearing because, I mean, we couldn't ask for a better hat, especially if you're diving into this stuff and it's all like professional sports team style, like it's perfect.
Yeah, and can you explain the origin of like why they're doing this year?
So, I don't know exactly what kicked it off, but for whatever reason, it seems like all these minor league baseball teams are doing like local folklore as like their aliases just for summer for some reason. So some of these teams started doing it beginning of summer. So some of them started in like June and stuff. Some of them are only doing it in August. But so far, I've been tracking it on my other show, and it seems like we have the Lake Michigan Looms became the Michigan Dogmen. It was an Ohio baseball team. I think it was like the Ohio like Bulldogs or something like that. They became the Ohio Grassmen. There was a team from Pennsylvania. I think it was the Dirty Birds. They became the Squonks. And then I think it's West Virginia Dirty Birds are going to become the West Virginia Mothmen actually in August. And then I don't remember what the team was from Pennsylvania, but it was something for the Squonk. But I've been trying to track and follow these because, you can't ask for better sports hats, of course. I mean, after me wearing New Jersey Devils for almost a year straight.
Yeah. And I wanted to tell you that out of Las Vegas, just already existing are the 51s, which is obviously based on Area 51. So I'm sure that's a pretty cool logo. I had a T-shirt back in the day, and I can't remember if it was an alien or a UFO, but it was, extraterrestrial related. Also, we actually have a minor league team here in Maine. They're the Portland Sea Dogs, and I wonder if they're going to do something.
Oh, I'm kind of curious. It seems like a lot of these ones are. I mean, there's certain ones that I almost feel like if these other teams are already rolling, like it's an opportunity that you're just going to miss out on, even for the sake of like merch sales. Like if all these other teams are doing it, of course, West Virginia has to do something for the Mothmen. And it's like a couple of these states, it's like you have to do your local folklore because it's too perfect. Yeah. And even if people don't really follow the minor league teams, I feel like, it's just extra sales because it's just something keeping folklore alive. Like I'm always saying on the show, anything to keep folklore alive and make people ask questions and tell these stories, man. And Michigan Dogmen, people ask about it. You get an excuse to tell some of the stories.
Absolutely, dude. That's amazing. Very cool.
Dude, I'm always super duper excited to tell people that the New Jersey Devils are actually named after the New Jersey Devil, like folklore. And then they tried to use it purposely with like, where it fell in perfectly with like New Jersey Devil, and they just used the devil as like the hockey team logo. So most people would assume that it's named after like devil, like, devil, like the typical thing you'd think of, but I think it's fascinating that they actually specifically named it after the folklore of the New Jersey Devil.
Absolutely, dude. Very cool, man.
Well, I guess kind of starting to talk a little bit about folklore, man. You always have some fascinating stuff going on, which is why I continuously always have to have you back on the show. And with that, of course, you're always diving into some new stuff. So almost every single time you come on the show, it seems like we have a new book to dive into. And this time seems like it's no different. So I guess we might as well start diving into some of these new stories that you covered in your new book so we can start tossing some ideas around on some of this high strangeness, man.
Yeah. The new book, it's called In the Pines, True Stories of Mystery, Mayhem, and Monsters in Maine. And with this book, I just have like a running files that just go on forever, where I'm constantly collecting new stories, and it's just all matter of high strangeness. So it doesn't matter if it's UFO, Bigfoot, missing people, whatever the hell it is, I want to collect it and I want to have it. And as of right now, I think I have maybe 120 files that I haven't even like processed yet, and to like dive in further. So there's like 4 or 5, 6, more books, just sitting there. And that's just what I have right now. And I'm continuously collecting these stories. So for this new book, I decided to kind of run the gamut. I'm typically a UFO guy, but I also love creatures and extraterrestrial entities and all this cool stuff. But for In the Pines, of course I have UFOs. Of course I have creatures and ghosts. But I also expanded it to bizarre true crime, strange people, cursed lands. There's even a spontaneous human combustion story.
Oh, I love those. As weird as that is, just like the ideas and theories behind that happening. Like I love hearing about those stories.
It's so strange. And I think in my write-up of this story that happened in Maine, I think I kind of run the gamut there, where it's a bit of a roller coaster that gets into some of the esoteric, some of the maybe otherworldly pieces of it, and then bring it back to the scientific aspects of what actually probably happens with spontaneous human combustion. So it's kind of interesting, but still at the end, I still leave it up to you to decide what, you choose to believe.
Well, I guess before we start getting into these fascinating stories, because I would definitely love to start with a human combustion story. One thing that's been sitting on my mind for a while, and I've been retelling this story on other podcasts, and of course, giving you full credit for it because I find it absolutely fascinating. And I want to make sure that there's not a continuation of this story. Last time you were on, we were talking about these like bug beings that you were talking about in Maine, where you had a young boy who had seen one, came into his room, said that it ate something out of his stomach, but like from the inside of his stomach.
Yeah, it bit him on the inside of the stomach.
That's so what it was. Bit him on the inside of the stomach. And then like a week later, you had somebody at an auto garage that ended up seeing something very, very similar that they didn't actually know that other person. So I'd love to know if there's any continuation on, or if you've heard any more about these bug beings in Maine.
I actually haven't. I'm always on the lookout for these mantis type, insect type creatures in Maine, and I haven't come across any other than some really strange descriptions of extraterrestrials from some people, but they don't exactly fit into a mantis man or an insect or grasshopper ant like creature, but they are certainly weird. But yeah, I can't say that I've run into it yet, but I'm constantly on the lookout. So if there's somebody out there that has a story, please feel free to contact me.
Also, too, I want to bring this one up before we get into human combustion, because I've been kind of retelling this story as another recent story kind of surfaced. You dive into a lot of strange stories, so I'm sure you've seen the whole thing about the man from Florida who supposedly got abducted by dolphins and was told to build a structure underwater for, what was the guy's name? It had some ridiculous name. It was like Gerald or something like that for the head dolphin.
Yeah.
So I was discussing the similarities of that story with your frog story, if you remember that one from the previous story, that we're even talking about these air bubbles, the fact that this guy got trapped underground or underwater by these things, and he was being used to do other tasks for them. So I just want to get some of your thoughts on this, and if you found or noticed any more correlations diving into this. But it seems like the most similar story I can find to that whole Gerald the Dolphin story is, weirdly enough, your Frogman story from Maine.
Yeah. I think you nailed it on the head already. They are kind of similar in structure. His story, as unbelievable as it sounds, it does kind of read like folklore, if you will. I guess the difference was in the Frogman story, the gentleman was actually breathing underwater and he could feel the heaviness. There wasn't air pockets or anything, but it seemed like he was tasked with doing things for these frogmen, which sounds similar to the dolphin piece.
I know that they mentioned something about, I don't know if it was specifically bubbles, but they said they made it so he was able to breathe. And some of the weird part that's baffling scientists, as they say, with this whole story, which maybe there's some weirdness to it, which is why you really haven't heard much of the story or is completely debunked. But one of the weird aspects was the fact that they found some type of deep water algae that was in his lungs, that they were this doesn't make any sense how this theoretically could have gotten here, especially if there wasn't water damage to the lungs. So that's one thing that they're kind of baffled by. So I'm kind of curious if there might be another correlation with that it maybe isn't that they have advanced technology or anything like that, but maybe there is some type of secret in some type of algae that might make it so you could potentially breathe in some of these conditions. I don't know. I'm kind of curious if you dived back into the story that you'd mentioned, if there was a way to actually physically check the guy out, if there would have been some traces of some weird type of algae that wouldn't have made sense for it to be in his lungs.
That would be fascinating. In the story about the frogman and the guy from Maine, he was never heard from again, so we don't have the chance to understand any sort of examination that he might have gone through at the time. But to find this deep water algae, should that part of it be true, is baffling. That's crazy, dude.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show.
Well, I guess before I sidetrack too much away from the human combustion story, I should probably bring it back to that one as a good spot to start with your new book before I go off into something completely different and we don't end up actually getting to the book. I want to make sure we angle down and start getting into that direction. Okay. Yeah, I want to hear about this human combustion story, man.
It starts out really like any other story. Old timer chilling in Maine. It's the middle of winter, so it's already cold. And I can't remember the exact date, but it's the early 1900s. And he's sitting in his living room, sitting in probably the chair, his chair, the one he always sits in, falls asleep in. And he's got one of these old school big iron stoves, and people hadn't heard from him for a few days, and they go to check on him, and all that's left are his feet and the burnings of clothing around this chair, but the rest of the entire structure, his little camp place, is completely fine. He was a smoker, but they didn't find any sort of they actually found his pipe on a shelf, he hadn't been smoking it at the time. So the running theories for the time, and I guess in hindsight too, for more modern researchers, is he might have been doing something by the stove, maybe cooking, and an ember or something popped up into his pant leg or maybe on his sleeve, and he didn't realize it, and it started to smolder. And in doing some of the research about what happens when people catch on fire, and there's been studies that they've done with pigs, and what happens is, the fat actually melts and it smolders, and it just kind of like liquefies and stays in one area, which sounds exactly what happened to this guy,
So, I mean, something that I find absolutely fascinating, especially with like that time period in general, is that you hear about these like weird cases of like basically everything was flammable. Weirdly enough, it was like 1800s, 1900s, almost everything was completely like flammable. But yeah, I'm sure you've heard the story about that strange picture of the boy crying in Britain, that they were always like, how come all these houses burn down, but this picture never actually burns down? So it's like once in a while you have these materials that are like completely like flame resistant, and they end up creating this like weird folklore about it. But considering that everything was so flammable back then, I'm kind of curious if, with particular cases, with some of these like human combustion cases, if, maybe it could potentially be some of like the dyes or something like that they were using in the fabric back then. Obviously they had no like cap on like what they were putting in things. I mean, they were putting like arsenic and lead and everything like that in their makeups.
Right.
Like, they were putting like uranium inside in the painting in the walls and everything like that. So, I mean, if you were using something that almost like smelt flammable or was almost like a gas to like color clothing, they weren't washing their clothes in the same sense that we are now. So I feel like there still might be some traces of whatever that combustible thing is. So yeah, I'm kind of curious if these human combustion cases that would pop up in the early 1900s may have been like a product of the dyes or the fabrics that their clothes are made out of, or something that they use to like strip or make the dyes. Or on the other side, knowing that it was kind of like the time when, the big factories were really starting to take off. There really wasn't standards or anything like that on like health practices and things. Almost kind of makes you wonder if, like, depending on what factory they worked at, they could have been around like gases that were completely flammable all day, completely soaked into their clothes. And all it literally took was just a little tiny ember. And then 2 seconds later, their entire outfit is completely on fire, and you can't really do anything at that point. You just fortunately turn into a hot glob of human fat on the floor.
Yeah. And the way these scientists were talking about it is like we literally act as a candle and our clothes being the wick. And, when you're burning a candle, it can sit on a table and it's fine. You know what I mean? Even if it burns all the way down, and it'll burn itself out. And that's exactly what's happening to a lot of these cases from the 1900s.
I mean, even going into that, man, it kind of makes you wonder what like hair products they could have potentially been putting in their hair too, that also could have been a factor of this. Again, just considering what they put in the makeup. I mean, you hear about greasers using literal grease back in the 50s. So it's like, what were they using back in like the 1900s in order to like grease down and slick their hair? Like, could have been completely flammable like liquids they were using to grease their hair down. They could have been using gas to strip and flatten their hair down for all we know, like.
Yeah. It's wild, dude. Wild. And, you go back even farther, and the lengths they were going to for beauty standards where, women were bloodletting and really strange things, causing harm to themselves just for, their times of beauty standards. Really strange stuff. Although it's not, we still do strange stuff now, but.
It's just a matter of time and figuring out what's actually completely unhealthy for you. Because, even looking back at the 70s, they were like, yeah, smoking's healthy for you. And now, we know it's completely not the case at all. So, I think it's just a matter of time before we realize that 90% of the things that we're doing now are completely terrible for you. Just off of one thing, simply, not to get too far into like any type of, not political or anything like that, but these new like drugs that people can take to lose weight where they inject themselves. Like, I feel like that's gonna be one of those ones in like 10-20 years you're gonna realize that like you can't take a shortcut. That's there's got to be some back end that's causing an issue on that one.
right. And in our cell phones too, I feel like we have enough time to understand, like, for studies on what these are doing to us, but they got to be doing something, right? I don't know.
You want to get into 100 different million conspiracies about, what your phone could potentially be doing to you, and all the different like signals and everything that are constantly being put out through your body and everything. Again, there's like a million different angles you could dive into with that one.
Because I'll get a random strange pain just like right here where, I put a phone up to. I'll get a random phantom pain right there. It's, it's weird.
Just a weird thing, and I don't know if anybody else gets it. Maybe it's just a trick of the mind, but do you ever get this thing where it's like, even if you don't have your phone in your pocket, wherever you normally keep your phone, it'll like, okay, so you know when you're going to get a text, how sometimes your like TV or like your music will buzz and you'll hear like this buzz, and then all of a sudden your phone will go off and you'll know you're about to get a text message because there's this like surge in the signal in the air.
Yep.
Do you ever get that where it's like, instead of it being a surge through the TV, you feel like a tingle in the side of your leg and then your phone goes off on the other side of the room, almost like there's like been some type of like weird connection with things going through your leg, like it picks up on that signal or something a little bit? Because I've had that happen a few times and it weirds me out, man.
Dude, that's great. I can't say that. I thought you were going to bring up phantom buzzing, and I get that a lot. I usually keep my cell phone in like my front breast pocket throughout the day. I just wear like this pullover type thing. And, but sometimes I won't have it on me, but I swear to God, I feel the vibration in my chest and I'll go to look and I'm like, I don't even have my phone on me. But I never thought to like, when I get back, to check my phone and to see if I had a message, because maybe that is happening. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be super duper creepy, man. I'm kind of curious if anybody else has experienced anything like that, because like I said, it could just be a trick of the mind, but if not, man, that's horrifying to think that these things could be a little bit more like connected to us, like signal wise, than we think. And if you get into the whole idea about human consciousness being an antenna, like that's an even weirder concept to think about.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Dude, there was, this was a couple of years ago now. It was not winter. I think it was end of April, early May. I think May, actually. And my girlfriend and I went to this kind of like an indoor flea market. It was kind of like a vintage sale type thing. And we're walking around. I'm carrying my cell phone. Her phone is in the car. And we're walking around and we see this interesting thing on a shelf that somebody's selling. And it's in the shape of like a gorilla or King Kong or maybe a Bigfoot or a Yeti or something. And all we do is we kind of look at each other and we point to it and we like, wow, look at that thing. I wonder what the heck that is. And we never say gorilla, King Kong, Yeti, or anything. We don't say anything about color, about anything about what it is. The next morning, my girlfriend wakes up and she goes on whatever social media, Insta maybe or something, and there's an ad that's been served to her, and it's this actual thing that we saw. And it makes no sense. We didn't even talk about it. I didn't take my phone out and take a picture of it. We didn't even mention it, but it is a Yeti snowball maker. So it's this big plastic thing that's like, I don't know, 2.5, 3 feet big. It's actually kind of cool because it looks like a gorilla or a Yeti or Bigfoot or something. But it's a Yeti snowball maker. It's this big plastic thing that comes apart and you stuff it with snow and close it and it makes a bunch of snowballs for you. That's all it does. So she got served this ad, at the beginning of May. So that makes no sense that we're getting like a snowball maker thing. Like how did what know? Like what knew to send that to us? It was weird, man.
Dude, I've had a few instances where it's like, I won't even say something out loud. I'll be like thinking about something. Like I'll be laying in bed, like thinking about like, oh, that's something I need to maybe look up tomorrow. And then I'll wake up the next morning and I'll start seeing ads for that. And that's like, there's two different ways to look at that. Either one, these algorithms have gotten so good that they,
hello, kitty.
Yeah, she's taking out my damn Back to the Future car. Woo.
Oh no.
Say either these algorithms have gotten so good that they're predicting what we're thinking before we're actually thinking it, or it's a matter of like the microphones, these things always being on and almost trying to pick up on absolutely everything they possibly can for the sake of marketing. Yeah. And both of those sound extremely practical, but I mean, even just for the sake of marketing, that seems to be their excuse for all of this geo tracking of everybody. So, I mean, I don't know, man, just horrifying the fact that if your cell phone theoretically, can predict the things before you're actually able to predict them, or there's this other connection where it's like clearly some type of mental connection, then that whole like buzzing in your leg concept kind of brings that concept to a different level.
It really does. Like how integrated are we,
Yeah, my cat took out my DeLorean.
The DeLorean's okay though. Is that a model or like an actual like toy?
It's actually a popcorn bucket that they did for like the anniversary of the movie.
Amazing.
Oh, and even better, not to like go crazy on the show showing this cool thing off, but it lights up.
Dude.
There's one in the back too. Where is that? Oh, did she knock it out? Yeah, she did knock it out.
Oh, wow.
There it is.
Dude,
it's a popcorn bucket, so you have to be able to pull it apart so you can clean it. There you go. And then the wheels flatten out, so it's like it flies in the second movie.
Yeah.
But apparently, this is the popcorn bucket, so not very practical.
No, not very practical.
But very cool for a desk toy.
Absolutely, dude. I wanted to get the Annabelle one when Conjuring 4 came out. They had the Annabelle popcorn bucket, but they sold out of those real quick. And then people were selling them online, for like hundreds of dollars. So.
That's where this one's at, actually. I have somebody in the family who is a big wig for Imagine Theaters that just got bought out by MJR and all that kind of stuff. So he has access to all this type of stuff. So he's like, yeah, I got a back room full of these DeLoreans. You want one? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I want one of those DeLoreans. I look them up online. They're selling for like $120. I'm like, you know how much these are selling for, right? He goes, yeah, I know. It's okay. Coming from the same guy who's like, yeah, check this out. I got a Pepsi Future that actually was on screen. He's got it in like a glass case in his garage.
Whoa. That's cool, man.
So I guess not to get too sidetracked with cool little collectibles and stuff like that, man. I have to make sure that we do the usual gambit, of course, with this book. You said that you, of course, have some new topics that you introduce. So I want to make sure we get into these true crime ones, of course. But as per usual, man, you got to give me a cryptid story. You got to give me a paranormal story. You got to give me an alien story. I need a little bit of each base, man, because I'm sure you got a little bit in the book. Or your favorite of each of them specifically, or the strangest. You know how I do it around here.
Yeah. I can't remember if did I tell the BEK, the Black Eyed Kid story before on this show?
We've talked about him a few times. I don't know which. I know you've had a few different Black Eyed Kid stories. So
yeah. Trying to run the gamut here. Bear with me just a second. Okay. So there's a story that I call The Kangaroo. And it's about this gentleman. I talked to him, 2017, I think, and his experience happened 10, 12 years before that. So like, 05, 07, something like that. But, and at the time he's kind of newly married, like for a couple of years. He's got a really young son, like 2 years old or so. And he works the graveyard shift, and he comes home one morning and the wife is making breakfast for the kiddo, and the kiddo is, sitting at the table, and they have a puppy and he's running around, and dad comes home and he kind of walks in and he sees everything. He's like, I love my family. This is amazing. And so he goes up to his wife and he's like, hey, you want to take the RV and go up to, Baldwin area, and we'll camp for the day, and she's like, you got to sleep though, and he's like, yeah, let's pack up. We'll get up there. I'll go to bed. You and the kiddo can have fun, and, wake me up before lunch. I'll get the charcoal started, and then we'll do, a barbecue and all that good stuff. And she's like, yeah, okay. So they do all that. They get to the camping spot. He goes to bed. She ends up actually starting the grill for him because she didn't have a heart to wake him up, but the puppy ends up waking him up. And, he's outside and he's, putting patties together. He's wrapping bacon around hot dogs, and the kiddo and the puppy are playing in front of him in the grass. And he's just kind of chilling, just enjoying everything. And the wife's inside and she's putting salads together and then grilling buns and stuff. And after a moment, he sees something kind of, about 100 yards away, which is really close. And it's at the tree line of this open area that they're in. And to him, it looks like this, 4 or 5 foot tall kangaroo. He sees these really thick thighs, squatted down like a kangaroo. And he sees this snout and brown fur and these ears sticking up. And the crazy thing is that this thing is staring daggers into his son. And he's like, oh no, what's this thing doing? Watching his son that way. And all of a sudden, this thing stands up, and it's about, in his opinion, 7-8 feet tall. It's not a kangaroo. It's some sort of bipedal humanoid thing. He doesn't know what to make of it other than it's got a snout and all that stuff. And he says now it's standing and its chest is heaving as he's breathing really heavy and watching his kid. And he knows, or he's thinking anyways, that this thing thinks his son is prey at this point. So he's freaking out. So he's trying to go out there as calmly as possible, not to draw attention from this kangaroo. And he doesn't want to alarm his son or the puppy. So he gets out there and he's able to scoop up the puppy. And then he's like, come on, buddy, we got to go in. And then he scoops up the kid and he makes his way as calmly but as fast as possible back into the RV. He gets inside and the wife's like, oh, is everything ready? She's like, I'm still making salads and stuff. And he's like, shh, come here, come here. And he points to the window. So she comes over and she's like, what? What's going on? And he's like, look. And so she's looking. And when she finally sees it, she like gasps and backs away. And she's like, what the hell is that? And he's like, I don't know, but we're getting the hell out of here. We're leaving everything. I'm not going back outside. They get in the RV and they drive back. He goes back a couple days later and gets everything. But one thing he did remember when we were talking, he's like, I didn't find it strange that nobody else was up there when we were up there. It was such a beautiful day, and we were the only ones up there. It's like the locals knew what the hell was going on or something. But that's basically the story in a nutshell. But
I was going to say, I feel like I've heard stuff that sounds like relatively like similar to that, as far as like kangaroo type beings that sound like it'd be a kangaroo, and then they stand up and they appear to be something like way bigger and way different. Like it almost kind of reminds me of like almost like the Proctor Valley monster, slightly almost like, the face of it. They almost kind of described almost like Minotaur like, which I could definitely see would almost be maybe kangaroo like, and it also kind of seems like it might be somewhat around the same size. So maybe not like exact, but I've heard descriptions of kangaroo looking like cryptids standing around 8 to 10 feet tall before. So it's like, this may not be an exact thumb, but like I've heard this one. It sounds very familiar. Not this one exactly, but things very similar.
Yeah. Because it is a similar description to that. That's really interesting. But I asked him, like, have you heard of dogmen before? And he's like, no, what the hell are dogmen? And I ended up telling him about the Beast of Bray Road, and maybe that's all I knew at the time. I don't even know, but yeah, I've kind of been operating under the assumption that that's kind of like a dogman that he saw.
I could also definitely see that too, and that's also fascinating to think about, like the whole idea about like descriptions of things, that a lot of the time people are looking for like exact identical things, not realizing that, people will describe things differently, especially if they don't have context. And I've said a million times that I think that a lot of these like old Bigfoot encounters are very possible they could have been dogman encounters, but because people didn't have anything somewhat similar to relate it to, they just kind of threw it under like the Bigfoot category if they were even willing to tell the story to anybody. So I'm kind of curious how many of these like kangaroo type being stories could also possibly be dogmen stories, because if you're looking at like the dark silhouette and the fact that the ears are usually pointed up, it usually has the elongated snout. I mean, I could almost see people describing dogmen as like a kangaroo looking Sasquatch.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Absolutely, dude. Wow. And, when you are seeing these things, people who are like enthusiasts of this stuff that, tune into the podcast to hear these types of stories, but maybe haven't had an encounter themselves, they might be under an impression that when you see something, you're like, oh my God, that's a Mothman, or that's a dogman, or that's a Bigfoot, or that's a ghost. This light in the sky is a UFO. When most of the time you're like, what the hell am I looking at? And like you were saying, when it's out of context, like this guy thought he was looking at a kangaroo, so descriptions can vary wildly, especially when you're not expecting for the paranormal to like come at you, And I mean, also too, features can also turn into like almost like cartoons of themselves under like high points of fear. So, your brain will naturally like, prime example, somebody pops out from around a corner at you. Your initial reaction is, you're seeing like something with sharp teeth with pointy claws jumping at you like this. And your brain tricks you into thinking that because you're in that fight or flight response. So, I'm not saying that people aren't seeing these creatures, but, when people are seeing the creatures, they might fixate on the nails. So like now the nails look like they're like giant claws, or they might fixate on the teeth. So now the teeth look like they're like the main thing that was taking up the entire mouth. Like whatever they fixate on under fear is going to be the most predominant feature. And it's probably going to be, they're probably going to view it like a little bit more excessive in their mind than they actually viewed it in person, just because of being under that state of fear. And I'll say it, like they might exaggerate, but not meaning to.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, also just humans recounting in general. I mean, the way that you typically tell a story is that a lot of the time it's like you don't remember every single characteristic of the story. You remember key details, and then your mind kind of fills in the gaps a little bit. That's why you can go to the same person, 10 years apart and ask them about, like a serious life event they had when they were a kid. And of course, these little tiny details are going to change as they go on, but that's because the human brain remembers these core details, and then the rest almost kind of become like filler, where stuff is kind of almost like, if somebody was with them and they kind of change a little slight tweak to the story, then their mind not even notice that tweak because that's not what they were fixating on in that story in the first place. But whatever they were fixated on, that's the thing that'll be like, no, this is exactly how it was. So it's like when somebody's recounting a story, you have all these different facets of people basically trying to recount pieces of stories that they all remember very differently. So it's like, the longer the time goes on, the harder it is to be able to tell these stories super duper close to the details, because your mind will even start playing tricks on you, even if you don't mean for it to.
Absolutely.
Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. And now back to the show.
This actually just happened with a UFO witness that I talked to yesterday, I think it was. And they're telling me about an encounter that happened 21 years ago. And, and I'm like, and I was asking a lot of questions, and they're like, listen, dude, like, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but, I was in my 20s, I'm in my 40s now. And, some of the finer details I'm missing, but here are the core things that I remember. And there are these things that stuck out to him, how thick this craft was, how triangular it was, these points of lights that were in it.
See, it's sometimes just such weird little things too, because sometimes like the thing that people remember is like a 2-inch door. Like that's like what they fixate on, is the fact that this door is exactly 2 inches thick, for example.
Right. And he was fixated on how thick the craft was. And he specifically said 15 feet. Like that's a crazy detail to remember after 20-something years, You know
what's really, really funny is the fact that I was just covering the whole Bob Lazar story with Orin yesterday on Bizarre Encounters. And we got to the point where we were about to do a part 2, but we're talking about the craft that he supposedly got to see and check out. And he said it was about 20 feet tall and about 50 feet wide. So I just thought that was a really funny detail that you said this guy said it's about 15 feet and the Bob Lazar story is about 20 feet. So very, very close, by the way, for these saucer dynamics.
Yeah.
Or dimensions.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Also, just another thing, he just kind of throws in this like kind of like afterwards, but he's like, oh yeah, we left this place that they were hanging out at like at 11:30. They see the thing. The next thing they know, they get home and they're like, why is it 5:30 in the morning? And they live like 40 minutes away from where they were hanging out. So now there's this whole missing time piece to it, which, it almost seemed like an afterthought, so it's something this gentleman and I are going to continue to explore together and see where it goes.
And I mean, even going back into the Bob Lazar thing too, and not saying that this guy is like the end all be all, but I do, take into consideration his story, even though there's a lot of weirdness and stuff around it. But, it seems to be a common thing, even coming from him with his quote, more like scientific imperialistic research on this stuff, that these ships affect like the gravity. They have, what's the word I'm looking for? They create like time rifts around them essentially. So it almost kind of seems like anything that would be within this craft would essentially be quote like outside of time as we supposedly know it. Because even with some of the experiments where they were like running the some of like the propulsion. Some of the different propulsion for some of these like ships and things, they were making mentions of like, you put your watch near it and your watch doesn't change time. It'll stay at that time. And then as soon as you pull it away from the field that its field of power, then the time will start moving again. So it's like, it seems like it's a common thing with these ships that they affect time itself when you're on them or near them. So, a lot of people try to connect it into thinking that they're almost like doing these like screen memories, or that they're like purposely like trying to make this time disappear. But I'm starting to wonder if it's not so much that, it's more so that just being on the ship itself causes rifts in time and causes like time to not necessarily disappear, but almost like condense, where, it's not so much that you lost like 4 hours of time. It's that you spent an hour as you know it on time on the ship, and that time almost like crunched down when they put you back outside of the ship again.
Right. Or maybe you even stepped out of time or something. I mean, we don't know how the hell it works, so.
There's clearly some connection with time with these ships, but I think it's something with the like actual function of the ships and not something that's like intentional, so to speak.
Yeah. Because I'm finding more and more when I talk to people where there's missing time, but absolutely no memory, no little tiniest detail of any abduction type piece happening. just the missing time. But when you hear missing time, there's an assumption that probably an abduction took place, but you don't remember it type of thing, or like you were saying, screen memory. But maybe it is just the missing time or the stepping out of time or condensed, whatever the hell's happening.
Yeah, they may have only had you for like a second, because even on the other parallels of that, you've heard these stories where people remember every single detail of their abduction experience, and they say that it felt like it was only 3 hours, but they were gone for 6 hours. So they were like, where did the rest of the time go? Maybe it's not that time went anywhere. Again, it was just that time was condensed while they were on the ship. So they experienced everything. It was just that when they removed them back from the ship, that's when time like corrects itself, so to speak, or like puts you back in like the proper place where you're supposed to be in that time.
Or at least in your perception,
of where you're supposed to be in that time. Like, I almost kind of think that diving into like some of like the deep space programs, I get into these like ideas about these like, I guess you could say like beings that you could say that exist outside of time or partially like control time or like whatever you want to fixate and call this thing. But it seems like there's these matters of like timelines and time trying to correct itself. And I think this is a concept that you see pop up in sci-fi a lot because it's like it's something that we all kind of know in the back of our mind, so we subconsciously end up putting it into writing. But I feel like this is something that we all inevitably know, is that like time will try to correct itself, or at least from our third dimensional perspective, it'll correct itself. So when you step into a fourth dimensional perspective and you're like outside of time as we know it, then your brain can't necessarily process and understand what's happening in that reality. But as soon as you go back in, that's when your internal clock and everything basically tries to like recalibrate you back with like how you understand time in your third dimensional reality.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And even Marvel had this in whatever phase, this huge piece of like timelines being broken and needing to correct and all this stuff. I think it was the Loki series that was a huge part of it with the TA. I forget what the organization was that Loki was in, and Owen Wilson was there too. I didn't.
Anybody that can cameo in those movies, they're going to take the opportunity to. Hey, as much shit as I like to talk about Marvel, though, just a quick little side tangent. I will say that I am pretty damn excited for this Spider-Man IooR series, because I was a huge fan of Spider-Man IooR back in the day, considering they only made 8 comics of it. I never thought I'd actually see a film adaptation. And then on top of that, they have 2 awesome perks. They got one, Nicolas Cage playing Spider-Man in IooR, which is fantastic. And then on top of that, being a true comic book fan and big film fan, they give you the option to be able to watch it in authentic black and white, which is what most of the comic books were, or you can watch it in color. So I wanted to give a shout out to, I don't even think that's Marvel directly like we think it is. I think
it's Sony.
Yeah, because, it is. It is Sony, yeah. So props to Sony for actually doing a Marvel thing I actually want to see for once.
Yeah, I know, right? This is like the first one, but I watched the whole thing. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic.
Ooh, I'm looking forward to it. I was hoping that it'd be one of those, just considering it was IooR and it was the comic book and it was like the one Spider-Man that actually used the gun, I was hoping that it would be dark. And from everything that I've heard, they like play into that like dark Spider-Man pretty well. But I mean, Nicolas Cage, man, what not a better character to play a dark Spider-Man?
and he's wonderful. He's so good, but everybody's so good in it. Like, they really did well with this one.
Hey, man, he was supposed to play Superman back in the day, and we never got that. So at least we get to see Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man.
Heck yeah.
Can you imagine if they actually made that movie with Kevin Smith writing the script for Spider-Man with Nicolas Cage playing, or as for Superman and with Nicolas Cage playing Superman? Like, that probably would have been the one Superman movie that wouldn't have been a flop.
Yeah.
But Kevin Smith did say it was complete garbage because they kept wanting him to add a giant spider. So that was like his whole ongoing thing that he talks about in all these things, is the director was really fixated on a giant spider.
Jeez Louise.
Well, I guess talking about giant spiders, that's probably a good spot to side tangent back into some monster stories.
So I guess if you want to go back to like snouted creatures, that are people misidentifying or whatever, and that doesn't come up very often, that we have our own strange kind of one-off cryptid. And there's been a few one-off cryptids. There's the Dover Demon, that as far as we know, that's in the encompassing like 3 days. That's like the only story about the Dover Demon, if you will. But there's something here that only ever happened once, and it's really vague on the where it happened and who the person was and all this stuff. But here's what we know. It's the 1950s, and there's a gentleman who worked in the woods that to me says he was some sort of logger. And he got up early one morning, got in his truck, went and got gas, filled up the tank, and then was driving, his long drive into the woods near this town called Cherryfield. While he's driving around, the car kind of stalls out. And he's like, what the hell? And he looks down at his gas gauge, and it's now on empty. And he's like, what the heck? So he jumps out of the car and he gets underneath it, and he's kind of feeling around and smelling for, a gas leak. But nothing seems out of place. There's no smell. There's no damp areas or anything. And while he's under there, he gets this feeling of being watched. So he gets out from under the truck, and now he's looking around and he's not seeing anything. So he finally does like a 180, turns around, and there's this creature standing there, probably 20 yards away. He says it's about 6 feet tall. It's got like grayish hair. It's got a snout and ears. And he says that its legs end in hooves, but it's got like shoulders and arms and hands, and it's wearing a plaid shirt. And to him, it had the face of a goat. And he said that this thing kind of not really spoke to him, but like communicated like telepathically to him with this smile. So this goat man smiles at him, and he gets the impression that that means he needs to follow it into the woods.
This seems very like satyr-like.
Yes, thank you. Because we'll get to that in just a second. So it turns around, starts walking into the woods, and the guy's like, well, to hell with that. I'm not going to follow this thing into the woods.
Never trust the Fae.
Yes. And so he jumps back into his truck, and just out of muscle memory, he starts the truck up, and he's like, oh, wait, it wasn't starting before. Like, it shut down. He looks down, and his gas gauge is on full again. So he thought that was strange, but that's basically the story.
Like this thing altered and messed with his perception, and almost tricked him into thinking that he was doing something that he wasn't actually doing. Weirdly enough, dude, I just watched a scary movie about something like this the other day called Oculus, where it was like, they were like altering their perception, where like they thought something was happening, but they were doing something completely different. So like the one dude thinks he's outside and he's on the phone, but he's actually sitting in the corner on the phone. It kind of makes you wonder how many instances in some of these experiences, because there's a lot of this telepathic connection with people, makes you wonder how many instances there may be where you think you're doing something and you're not actually doing something, or you're not doing something and you think you're doing something.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even some of these like extraterrestrial cases, for example, man, or even,
Absolutely.
I mean, some of like the Bigfoot, like infrasound type of like experiences, it makes you wonder, like, again, if you think you're running, but you're actually completely standing still, or, as soon as these like extraterrestrials have you in their like target, so to speak, it makes you wonder if they have you captured like mentally, so to speak, that you could think that you're running away, you can think you're doing whatever, but like you're fixated and you're stuck there.
Yeah. It's actually a really good form of distraction, while they do things, if you will.
But the connections in with the fact that you said that story happened in Maine, of course, and there seems to be this whole connection with these like pagan fae type deities in all of like the New England territory. And I know, of course, it's probably linked with everybody coming over and that being the first area that everybody settled. But it seems like as it started to get more west, it kind of started to get like its own like spin to it almost. But when you look at stuff that's like on that coast, it's like there's a lot of this stuff with like green men, with satyrs, with like straight like, European, like these like folklore fae type creatures and like straight experiences with them. And, if people didn't ever want to put stock in them, like it's like super strange when you have it happening on two continents, and now it's so far beyond the original people that it's not like they have that same context of like, the folklore they're bringing back from their previous country. Like, again, how else do you explain something like satyr-like? It's pretty like undescribable, or as soon as you see a satyr, like there's nothing else that looks like that. It's very descriptive, and it's something that's been an archetype all through, I guess you could say, folklore since almost like the beginning of like tracked folklore, that these like satyr-like beings are trickster beings that try to lure you into places.
Yeah. And what's interesting is the guy noted that this goat man was wearing an article of clothing. He was wearing a flannel shirt, much like a lot of the loggers wear, so it's almost like it was trying to be of the place and of the time, if you will. you know.
It almost kind of makes you wonder two things. If one, it was trying to use it to blend in. If two, it was almost wearing it as like a token, like it's already like taken somebody before. Or three, if it might also be some type of like, okay, you know how like they say in the Fae that if you go into the Fae world, you're not supposed to eat any of the food, take anything from there because now you have a piece of yourself there. It kind of makes you wonder if the logic would work the same the other way, that if there are these Fae type beings, that they might intentionally take objects of this world because it makes it so that they can be a little bit more physical in this world.
Yeah. Wow. Man.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to that deep conversation you crave.
I mean, just for the sake of, since we've been kind of diving into it, out of curiosity, just in Maine, have you come across any more of these almost like European, like pagan type stories?
There's some, what do we get into here? There's actually like some gnome type stories that we have. And so, you know, you're talking like these little tiny entities, if you will, which that could represent a bunch of different European areas, you know. And a lot of times they have like this sense of wonder. It's not necessarily nefarious, but there's a trickster aspect to it in a lot of these cases. We also have
you know what's funny is the original gnome folklore, the red caps. The reason they were called red caps is because they would soak their caps with blood because they were like vicious and super duper mean. And then like as time went on, they kind of turned into these like malevolent, helpful like worker bees of like nature. But like the original red cap stories were literally like they were called red caps because their hats were soaked with blood. Like
Dude, there's a great movie that came out. I can't even remember the name of it now. I'm on the spot. But it's basically about these red caps, these people from the States. They inherit
Is
this
that the one with Martin Starr?
Is Martin Starr in it? No.
He was one of the guys from like Freaks and Geeks and stuff back in the day.
Yeah. He's not in this one, no. I think I know what you're talking about. There's something in the barn, maybe. Like
yeah, that's like some like elf movie or something like that, or like gnome movie I saw with him in it recently too.
Yeah, this is this kind of plays kind of like an A24 type movie, but you know, a long lost relative dies and leaves like this Ireland home, you know, stone house, you know, to this United States couple. So they come over and decide to live there, and every, you know, neighbors come by and they're like, "Don't forget to feed them," you know, the red caps, you know, and they're like, "What?" And when they don't, you know, when they're not keeping up the tradition, bad stuff starts to happen, you know. So then they start feeding them, but then they forget one day, and it all goes to hell. It's a great movie. I'll try to figure out the name of it and send it to you. But
also part of the folklore, by the way. Once you start feeding fairies, you're not supposed to stop because they will get pissed off.
yeah. This movie actually did a really great job with like the lore of it all. So, you know, somebody was doing their homework.
See, and that also kind of makes you wonder if, like, I was kind of saying that the reverse of you don't go into the Fae world and eat the Fae food because you become part of it. It makes you wonder if by giving the Fae food of this world, if you're almost making it so, again, they can be in this reality more easily. So, like, by thinking that you're helping the problem, you're actually making it worse because now they have more of a presence here.
Yeah.
Which, weirdly enough, they say it was Sasquatch, too. Once you start gifting, you can't stop. So, I mean, maybe there is a connection with the Sasquatch and the Fae. And weirdly enough, man, I've been to a few different, like, troll museums, and they all kind of relate Sasquatch as, like, a woods troll. So, I mean, definitely seems like there could be a weird connection there, because a lot of the folklore does cross over.
Yeah, it definitely crosses over. That's interesting. I wanted to get into a missing person case and get your thoughts on it. This happened in the late 1800s. This woman named Elsie, she was 24. Her mother had died a few years ago, and she's living with her father and siblings. And she was a church organist and also a homemaker. And she had a lot of internal issues. She always thought she wasn't like religious enough. That really weighed heavily on her mind and stressed her out quite a bit. But everybody thought like, no, you're very faithful. Like, what are you talking about? She also worried about her health. Her mother had died of like tuberculosis. I think that's what it was. And so she was convinced like she was going to get that and die early herself. And, so she would have these bouts of being sick, and she would miss, you know, doing the church organ on Sundays. But on this particular Sunday, she was finally feeling better. It had been weeks, and she was excited to get to the church to play this organ. And she leaves early. She does all of her chores. She leaves early because she wants to like shake the rust off and go practice a bit before the community starts showing up. Well, they show up and she's not there. And so her family is concerned, and the townspeople are like, well, maybe she got sick again and, had to go home, and you guys cross paths, didn't see each other. And they're like, you're probably right. We'll get home after church and she'll be up there in bed. They get home. She's not there. And also her father's gun is missing. So now they're concerned that maybe she wants to harm herself because she has been known to have these bouts of depression. So they go to the neighbors, and then those neighbors go to the next neighbors, and they get a pretty good sized search party to look for Elsie, and they don't find her. The next day, being Monday, word got around town, and it got to the surrounding areas, and they actually shut down the mills and other jobs so people could join the search. And it turned into about 800 people looking for Elsie. And it was like on the third day, they finally brought in a bloodhound and all this stuff, and trying to find her. And some searchers actually saw her way far away, like 500 yards away, and she was holding up her skirt walking through this brook. So they yelled to her, and she wouldn't acknowledge them and just continued walking. And by the time they got there, she was long gone. So now on the 5th day that she's been missing, the hound has her scent and follows her scent all the way to this tree. And the dog starts barking up the tree, and it's got its legs up on the tree, barking, looking up. And the searchers look up, and they see Elsie at the top of this tree, and she's alive and looking down at them, but she looks feral. Her hair's in front of her face. She's all dirty. Parts of her clothing are missing. And so they're trying to get her to come down, but she's non-responsive. So they finally get a ladder, and they, get word to her father. So he's making his way down, and they get a ladder and they put it up on the tree, and a searcher goes up there, and he has to pry her fingers off the branches to get her down. But once they do that, she kind of becomes a little bit more docile and allows the dude to bring her down. And then her dad comes, and she's showing no recollection of who her father is or anything, but they all go to the hospital, and on the ride over the hospital, she ends up resting her head on his shoulder. So there's a bit of recognition there. Days go by, and she's starting to come around. She's starting to talk a little more. And after a couple of weeks, she's back to herself. And that's when people are like, what the hell happened? Where did you go? What happened to you? And were you going to hurt yourself? And she goes, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I remember leaving for church, and I must have lost my way. And that's all she knows. And she ended up living, a long, productive life. But there's this 5 days where she was missing. She has no recollection of it, and was found, at the top of a tree, 6 miles away from where she lived. So for me, anyways, to get your thoughts on it, we're future humans, looking back on this late 1800s story, to me, that kind of sounds like a fugue state that she was in, and they just didn't know what that was at the time. But what are your thoughts?
It almost kind of reminds me of some of the missing 411 type stuff. It almost kind of seems almost very abduction reminiscent, or Fae encounter reminiscent. Especially the Fae stuff. It seems like a lot of people have these strange interactions with the Fae, and then they won't remember hearing anything about it. But I mean, if you're looking at it from a more, I guess, taking away the possibility possibly of there being some type of paranormal aspect to it, I mean, it definitely seems I can't think of any solid explanation. I mean, it seems like back in the day, there was a lot of these weird diseases that would pop up randomly that didn't really make any sense. You had that whole dancing plague thing that popped up. Yeah. So, I mean, there could have been some type of bug or something that you got that could have affected your brain for a few days and kind of made you almost primal for a few days. Not to make a direct connection with this, but there's almost there's references in the Bible of a curse that God gave somebody where they turned them feral for a few days and then kicked them back. I mean, there's the whole thing with King Nebuchadnezzar, where he goes feral for a bit and then ends up coming back and living a productive life and stuff. So it's I don't know, you see these stories in other places, and it doesn't necessarily directly correlate, but I mean, there may be something there.
There might be. Yeah, there definitely might be. And I've even heard like extraterrestrial theories about, why she went missing and why she was in a tree and, things like that. But yeah, it's interesting to get the different perspectives. I've heard the Fae theory before, extraterrestrials, but also just like a fugue state, and they just didn't.
I mean, Fae and extraterrestrial could be the same thing. It's just viewed at from two different time periods, though, weirdly enough.
It's just, the different language to describe the same thing, which I think you and I have actually talked about before.
I mean, the only thing that, considering that she was up in a tree and didn't have any like connection with anything, like I'm kind of surprised that considering the time period, even if this woman did have an abduction experience, I don't think that she's going to come back and tell anybody one little lick of that story anyways. So, I mean,
right.
Even if she did have something super duper weird happen to her, I mean, the fact that she doesn't remember any of it almost kind of adds some possible validity in the fact that she did have something really strange happen to her and she didn't want to try to explain it to people of the time because, being a woman of that time and trying to explain this crazy story, like, next thing you know, you're going to be the crazy town hag.
Yeah, absolutely. And, was she chased up the tree or was she up there because she was scared? We don't know, but that could be another reason on why she's up in the tree.
Was there like anything else like later on in life that she like came out and said anything, or she like literally just didn't even like acknowledge it after this time had passed?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, like there wasn't a whole lot of follow up in regards to the story. There was the initial story, and it made headlines like actually all around the world. It's crazy, like how these headlines, like in the London press or whatever it was called, to like run this story, like they had their own AP or something, at the time where these stories kind of spread. But as far, that, and it basically told the story that I told you. But as far as a follow up goes, I wasn't able to find anything.
I was hoping there would be one of those things where it's like a deathbed confession. Maybe she actually said something or anything, but unfortunately it seems like it's going to be one of those stories, like a lot of the really fascinating ones of that time that we'll never be able to unfortunately figure it out. Just create crazy theories on it.
and still telling the story over 100 years later, which is, fun and fascinating. And I think that's why it's important to collect and share these stories. In
all fairness though, if the answer would have been simple, then it wouldn't have existed and stuck around forever. Like if there was a straight explanation for the Kentucky meat shower and they proved that it was literally just vultures throwing up, which I do not think it is, by the way, but that's the ongoing theory for it. Like if they proved that was it, I mean, that story would just be something that they tell in science classes, like a funny little haha. It wouldn't be, this like mysterious, like cryptid story. Right. Well, I guess since we're starting to get to about that hour point, I know that you said that you're running in a really, really hot room and I am. Would prefer not to get cooked for too long. I want to hopefully be able to get into one more story if you got the time for it before we start wrapping stuff up, man. Completely dealer's choice, whatever one you think that the listeners be the most fascinated in, man. I would love to hear it, man.
This one really, when I first heard it, scared me. I also lived in the area when this was happening.
Already off to a good start.
I think it was 2003, in this town called Cape Elizabeth in southern Maine. This woman had gone to bed. She did her evening ablutions, brushing her teeth and all that good stuff. And the last thing she would do is fill up a glass of water, put it on her nightstand and go to bed, in case she needed a drink in the middle of the night. And that exact thing happened. She wakes up and she kind of props herself up on her elbow and she's going to reach for her drink when she notices something at the foot of her bed. And she's looking at it, straining to see it, and it looks like the silhouette of a person. So instinctually, she just turns on the light. And it turns out it was some dude standing at the foot of her bed watching her sleep.
Oh, hell no.
She screamed and he runs out of the house. So, of course, she calls the police and all that stuff and files a report. But, she barely even got a good look at him. So a couple of weeks go by and this father and mother, they're a young couple and they have a baby. And they just put the baby to bed and now they're going to bed. And in the middle of the night, the baby starts crying. They both wake up, but dad says, I'll get the baby. So she goes, okay. And he kind of turns over to like pat her, like a loving pat, like I'll go get the baby. And when he does that, he's looking at her and he sees standing by her side of the bed the silhouette of a person standing there. And he's like, what the hell? And he turns on the light, and it's some dude. And he goes running out of the house. And the guy goes, the father goes running after him. But by the time he gets to the sidewalk and he's looking both ways, the guy's nowhere to be found. So, of course, he calls the police, and he has a little bit better of a description. Seemed like a young guy. He was white. That's a little bit more of a description. So another couple weeks go by, and there's another encounter, and it's very similar to the first ladies. Like this person wakes up in the middle of the night, it's a woman, and standing against the wall, but near the foot of the bed, was this man watching her sleep. But now you fast forward a couple more weeks, and there's this younger woman, and she wakes up in the middle of the night, and this guy is bent over right in front of her face, looking at her, watching her sleep. And she opens her eyes and just screams and immediately turns on the light and gets a really good look at this guy. And he goes running out of the house, just like all the other stories. And she calls the police, and she tells them that she got a good look at him. And they said, well, let's get with the police sketch artist. So they do, and they get a really good sketch of this dude, and then that starts getting circulated around town. There's also a neighborhood watch that's put together, to everybody to kind of look out for each other.
This guy's lucky that he didn't do this to a guy on this last one, because whatever this thing is, maybe we would have known what it was. But I feel like my first reaction as a male in the middle of the night, if somebody's standing over me, I'm not going to think. I'm just going to instantly swing up.
Yeah. At least you would think so. You know what I mean? You would think so.
I mean, people scare me in the middle of the night, and I start swinging. So, I mean, like...
Watch out.
But, I mean, that would have been that much more horrifying, though, if she went to go and clip this thing in the jaw and her fist went right through this thing's jaw. Like, oh, nope.
Yeah, now we're on a different level. We're on a different level at this point, man. That's
when you go straight through it out of the bed, out of the bedroom.
Yeah. And this story would be called The Demon of Cape Elizabeth. But yeah, so this happens a couple more times, and the locals are given the police names of people they think it might be, but they track down each suspect or supposed suspect, and they question them, and nobody fits the bill. Nobody looks like this guy, and so the police never arrest anybody. And to this day, it's a mystery. But a couple of months later, in another Cape Cod in Massachusetts, this starts happening again. So did this guy move, or is he escalating? Because this started turning into sexual assaults on women. And then they never caught anybody in Cape Cod. Well, 6 months later, it starts happening even further north in Nova Scotia, Canada. And this one woman got a really good look at this person and thought that she had seen him around the neighborhood. So she told the cops who she thought it was. They end up arresting this guy, and he gets convicted of these sleepwalker crimes, and some were assaults and some were just him standing there watching people. But he had no ties to Maine. He had no ties to Cape Cod. So is he the same person? Is he not the same person? But people are curious. Turns out 5 years into this guy's sentence, it gets overturned and he gets released. He turns around and immediately breaks into somebody else's house, but he was just a burglar. He was just a burglar. He didn't like assaulting people or anything, and he ended up getting arrested and thrown back in jail for B&E.
The guy said, fuck it. If I got convicted of a crime I didn't commit, I might as well get thrown back in for one I do commit.
Might as well do something.
He was hoping there would be just like a get out of jail free card on this one. Like they already owed him for the time that he already did. So he was like, I can do one crime and I'm good on this one, right?
It's fine.
I already served time ahead of it.
Yeah, it's kind of similar. So why not? So anyways, the Nova Scotia crimes, those all stop. So to this day, there's been no arrests in any of these towns. And this is a story I called The Sleepwalker of Cape Elizabeth. But I was living in the area at the time. And I even had one of my cars being worked on at a garage in Cape Elizabeth because a buddy had suggested him to me because he was really nice. He was really affordable and seemed really honest. And so I would bring my car to him, and I was sitting in his garage during the summer this was happening, and I had no idea what the people of Cape Elizabeth were dealing with and at the time. And I wish I like read the paper or something, because I guess it was all over the news and everything. But in my new book,
don't live in places with the word Cape in the name, because it seems like that just brings badness.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
Not good places to live. Avoid anything with the word Cape in it.
Yeah. Don't wear a cape. Don't live in places that have cape.
Maybe wear a cape. Maybe that'll help.
That might help, actually. It might give you some confidence. So yeah, wear a cape. But in my new book, something new I'm trying is, for some of the stories, if there's like a cool picture or video or an old school newspaper article or something, I put in a QR code at the end of, some of these stories, so you can kind of get involved and see the picture that I've been talking about, or watch the video of what I'm talking about. And for this particular story, you can scan a QR code and see the police sketch of this sleepwatcher of Cape Elizabeth. And it's creepy, man.
That's super duper cool. I just want to throw in the fact that I really like that people are starting to do that with books, because especially with like videos and stuff, it's like there's no good way of putting it into a book. So it's like, it's really, really cool that a lot of people that are able to use these QR codes now to actually be able to put like videos in books. Like there was like the Freeman files, which I'm sure you're familiar with, like the Freeman like Bigfoot case from back in the 90s. His son wrote a book called the Freeman Files, and he has a bunch of like videos and stuff like that were like his dad's like footage. And it's like, again, how else would you have been able to share that stuff unless you QR code it into a book? Super duper cool.
Yeah. I guess the only way that it kind of would work with like just like a web address is like a Kindle or ebook version. But this, if you're into the print book, you can still use your technology. It's really cool. And I've gotten really great feedback on using the QR code. So I'm glad I implemented that.
Hold on tight, guys. This is our last break, so stay tuned. And we are back to the show. So let's hop right in. Well, of course, I guess speaking of the book, before we get into words of wisdom and all that fun stuff, as I'm sure you know, we usually have to end the show on. We, of course, have to let people know where to get this book. And if anybody else hasn't picked up any of your previous books, you might as well let them know where they can get all these books from.
Yeah, sure. All of my books are on Amazon, but they are also available from my own online store, which is slevik.squarespace.com. And if you buy a book from my store, it comes autographed and you get a bookmark and probably a few little extra goodies. But you can get them on Amazon if you got the free shipping and all that good stuff. I understand it. And if you Google,
just to throw it in there, by the way, for all the authors out there, it is always better to buy the book directly from the author, because Amazon does take a giant chunk out. I know a lot of authors don't like to mention that, but if you really want to throw it back to the person who's really putting the time, effort into a book, and considering how long it takes to write a book, Amazon is always easier, but I always highly recommend buying it directly from the author, because that way they're getting the most out of it instead of like 10 cents per copy of the book. So again, right. If authors don't say it, I want to make sure that I say it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Because I want the reader to do what's easiest for them, so I appreciate you putting that out there. Also, I have a podcast. It's called Haunted Pines. Episode 7 came out just a few weeks ago, but in 2 days, episode 8 is coming out, and that is a story about Whitley Strieber and a couple of black-eyed kid encounters that he had. If listeners aren't sure who Whitley Strieber is, he was the gentleman that inspired the movie Communion. He wrote a book called Communion, and it's about his abduction experience in upstate New York. And he went on to write a bunch of other books about his experiences and ongoing experiences that he's been having, but he also had some black-eyed kid encounters, and one of them happened at the cabin where he was abducted. So that's what this next episode's about, and it comes out on Thursday. Again, it's called Haunted Pines, wherever you get your podcast.
Well, perfect, man. And I will make sure I include all of that stuff down in the show description so everybody can find it quick and easy, of course. And before I let you go completely, as per usual, man, I have to do some words of wisdom before we go. So if there's any words of wisdom you might want to bestow on the listeners this run, man, what might it be?
Yeah, and kind of like you, not to get political, because it sucks that everything can be political these days, but considering what month we're in, be kind, and love is love, and it's better to have love in your heart than hate. So that's my words of wisdom.
Ain't that the truth, man? And as per usual, I always thoroughly enjoy these conversations, and I'm really, really looking forward to next time. And as it usually seems like it goes, considering that you have a new book out and everything, I'm sure at some point soon you'll be probably popping up on Bizarre Encounters in the next couple of months, because that tends to be how we tend to go back and forth. So if anybody enjoyed this conversation, make sure you guys look out on the other show, because you guys will probably see him pop up in the next few months.
Very cool. And I love Orin, so that'll be fun.
Always a good excuse to have a new or another conversation, man.
Absolutely, dude.
Big thanks to everyone for catching this week's episode. Just a reminder that this show wouldn't be possible without listeners like you. Podcasts are a labor of love, and I want to be able to keep this show going for as long as possible. So if you'd like to support the show and all the hard work behind it, I would definitely appreciate it if you guys wouldn't mind leaving a review or rating for the show anywhere that you guys happen to listen to podcasts. Hopefully 5 stars only. Hopefully I don't get anybody else giving me 1 star and call me a cheeseball, because I definitely don't appreciate that, considering that I'm just a dad trying to do this as like a part-time thing. But anybody that has anything nice to say would definitely appreciate it. And you guys can also share the show directly through word of mouth with anybody that you think might enjoy this show. The only way that podcasts like this grow is through word of mouth, so anything you guys can do is the only way the show is going to grow, and I definitely appreciate it. And if you guys are in a position to support the show and find value in what I do, please consider donating to the show directly. That is always the best way to support the show, and you guys can do that through Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal, and you guys can leave a note with that, and once I find it, I will of course read it on the show, give you guys a big shout out, and of course you guys can always put a little ad for your business, anything like that. You guys are more than welcome to do that, and I will definitely make sure I read it on the show. And you guys can also go and check out the Patreon. Just one tier available over there for $2.50 a month. That's cheaper than a bag of chips, cheaper than a can of soda, and you guys can support the little guy in the process, and you guys will get early access to all the stuff I got going on. And hopefully if I get more people starting to pop over on the Patreon, I can start expanding that a bit more, but it's kind of hard to expand it when I ain't really got too many people popping in over there. So if you guys don't mind going and checking it out, I would definitely appreciate it. And if you guys want to see what it's all about, there's a 7-day free trial, and if you guys like it, hopefully you guys will end up sticking around. And last but not least, you guys can always go and check out the Bizarre Reality Media merch store with t-shirts designed by yours truly and a couple of friends in the community. And t-shirts over there are just $15.68 plus shipping, which equal out to about $20 with shipping. So not too bad for a t-shirt, about average. And you guys can support the little guy in the process and check out hopefully one of my all original designs, or big shout out to Chris Holmes for a lot of the original designs that he's helped me out with over there too. And also, if you guys want to be able to keep up to date on the show, you guys can always go and follow the show on Instagram and Facebook. That's the best way to keep up to date with anything interesting going on with the show. And you guys can also catch live shows and video content over on the Bizarre Reality Media TikTok, YouTube, and Rumble channels. And if you guys need another podcast to hopefully get you guys through the work week and you guys haven't already checked it out, don't forget to go and check out my other show, Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin. A lot of the same topics that we dive into on this show, just a little bit different of a format because it's our deep dives and our research with a little guests sprinkled in the mix here and there, of course. But if you guys enjoyed this show, I definitely think you guys will enjoy that show too. A little bit more of a comedy factor to it because we, of course, joke around a little bit because we're always regulars on the show with each other. But again, if you guys haven't already checked it out, always worth going and checking out if you guys need another podcast to get you guys through your work week. And if you guys happen to miss anything that I mentioned, it is all available on that link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey. With a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to